Hey, it's Chris Niccolls here from Bow River Troutfitters. Today I want to show you some flies that are super quick and easy to tie. Great for beginners just learning to fly tie, but also for experienced anglers that just want to tie something quickly. So I'm not going to show you one fly, I'm going to show you three. We've got a red worm, we've got a stonefly nymph, and a streamer. These are all quick to tie and they all work well. First, a red worm. I don't like classic red worms. I'm going to tie small ones. So this is on a red hook, but you can use a regular hook. I've put a red bead on there. I'm just using red thread. And what I'm going to do now is secure brassy sized wire, a little bit thicker than you would normally use, but it's going to build up our body. I'm securing this well down past the bend of the hook. Now we're going to do connecting turns all the way back up to the fly. This adds weight to help this fly get down nice and quick, but it also makes it very durable and it's very simple to tie. You can see that the wire is going to create that thicker body that we want for this worm. We're going to go all the way up to the bead. Now I'm going to lock it off with the thread and then remove it. Now I'm going to tie in some peacock herl. I'm using red peacock herl, but you can use any color. And I like to twist them together just to add a little bit more strength before I start wrapping. And then I'm just going to wrap up a few wraps, lock them down with red thread, and then I'm going to whip finish. And this fly is done. I find it very effective even on incredibly large trout, and I far prefer it to regular red worms. Fish it really small, size 16, size 18, those work great. Next, we're going to do a girdle bug. This is a very simple yet very effective stonefly nymph. You'll find these in every guide's boxes. So here I'm using sort of a size 8 nymph hook or streamer hook. You want this to be a fairly long shank to play with. I'm starting with brown thread, no bead, and I'm just putting on some 0.20 thick lead wire. This not only gives us weight to get this down, but also lets the body have a bit more of an interesting bug-like taper. I'm going to secure that down with some loose wraps and then just go down a little bit past the bend where it starts to curve past the barb. So now I'm using rubber legs here. I'm just going to take a strand of rubber legs, double it in half, lock it down with the thread, and then I'm just going to splay these out. This is going to be the back legs, so to speak. I want them to kind of V off the back of the hook, so I'm just securing those down with some thread wraps. Now I'm going to start my chenille. I'm using a variegated chenille so that it shows up easy on camera. I'm using an orange and black, but I usually like brown, black, or black and gray as well. And I'm simply going to wrap it up to about a third of the way, basically to the lead, and lock it off. Now I'm going to add more rubber legs. I'm going to put one pair on each side of the hook. I know you can't see it very well right now on the other side, but I'm basically just splitting it with the thread and then locking it in place so that it goes out like a V on both sides. There you can see the other piece. And again, I'm just securing it right through the middle and locking it down. Now I'm going to advance my thread to just before the lead, and then I'm going to wrap the chenille, and I can use the chenille to position those rubber legs exactly how I want, make sure they splay out the way I want it to be. So now I've wrapped it all the way up to almost the eye of the hook, not quite. Now I'm going to lock down two more pieces of rubber legs, but this one I'm going to do a little bit different. Although I'm splitting it right down the middle, just like we did before, the front side, I'm going to push forward off the hook as antenna, and then the back side of the rubber legs, I'll let those split out as legs. What this will give us is two antenna in the front, 3 legs on each side, and then 2 antenna on the back. So I'm just securing those in place, advancing the thread to the eye of the hook, and I'm going to wrap my chenille up. Again, use this opportunity to lock down and position the rubber legs in the right orientation that you want. I'm just going to wrap them up here to the eye of the hook, and then my fly will be done. I can secure it off with some thread wraps and whip finish it. This has a really buggy appearance, and when this chenille gets wet, it just looks like scales and carapace, and it's a really buggy looking material, even though right now it probably looks pretty silly. So cut that off, secure it down. Last thing I do is I'm just going to trim my rubber legs to the length I want. You want to have fairly exaggerated length. It's going to give you a lot of movement, but I'm going to trim the front and the back. I like to pull all the middle rubber legs up like this, just, kind of give it a haircut, clip it off there. And now you can see when I rotate the fly, that pattern. See how those legs crisscross over? It looks really buggy, and honestly, it just works incredibly well. All right, nice and simple streamer now. Here I've put on a larger bead. It is a jig bead. I would normally use a regular bead, but I like the color. I'm going to tie some brown thread behind it, and now we're going to lock it off. This is super easy. I'm using pine squirrel. I just want the length of the tail to be a little bit longer than the hook itself. We're using a fairly short hook here. This is like a size 6 nymph hook or size 8 nymph hook. You don't need a long shank. Just a few thread wraps to lock it down there onto the top. And now I'm just going to palmer this fur all the way up. I am wetting my fingers and slicking back the fur so I don't trap any, but this is so quick and easy to tie. I'm going to go right up to the bead, lock it off with some thread wraps, and you could honestly fish it just like this. Just so that it's not super, super simple, what we're gonna do is then just add an extra step. I'm gonna put a little bit of ice dub on my thread, just to kind of give it a bit of flash and a bit of color there. Here I'm going with an olive, gold, green kind of mix. It'll go well with the bead. I'm just putting a little bit on here. I'm gonna do a few wraps, and then I'm just gonna rough it out, and that way it's just gonna kind of add a little bit of flash, a little bit of color, and blend it in. These pine squirrel leeches are very effective. You can swing them as streamers, but you can also dead drift them as nymphs. And all three of these flies that we've shown you today, they would all work very well together on the same line. So that's it. You can see here now it's got a nice bushy profile. Make sure that you use pine squirrel because it's nice and small. You don't want to use rabbit. It's way too thick for these small hooks. The real beauty of these flies is that you can tie them up literally in a couple minutes. You know, even if you're about to head out for the day and your box is a little bit bare, tie some of these up. It'll only take half an hour or so, and then you can head out and they absolutely will catch fish for you. Thanks for joining us. Check out our other fly tying videos. Please subscribe and like the channel. We'll see you soon for another episode on Bow River Troutfitters.